Still a couple more people joining in, but I think we'll get started just because we're after 10 now. So, morning. So my name's Lupash and I'm on the marketing team here at Bridgell. So I just wanted to thank you all, first of all, for joining us for our Power Platform governance session. We'll be discussing how you can organise your environments to get the best results. Sorry, is anybody having a bit of echo, actually? Reminds. Okay, so just a quick note before we get started. So the session is being recorded and we'll be sending out a copy of the recording and the slides after the event. So if there's anything that you want to catch up on, you can do, or if there's anybody that couldn't make the session, you can share that with them, share the slides and the recording with them as well. You will notice that you are on mute at the moment, but we just want to encourage you to use the chat function to ask any questions, and we'll do our best to get them answered throughout the session. And we do have a bit of a Q&A at the end as well, so if there's anything that we missed throughout the session, we can obviously address it then as well. So that's just a few of the housekeeping points covered. So what I'll do now is pass you on to our team of experts, so Graham McLean and Taylor Walker, who will be running through the session. So we hope you enjoy and find it useful. And yeah, I'll hand over to yourself, Graham. Thanks.
Thanks, Lupash. Yeah, thanks for joining us this morning. Today we're going to run through, as Lupash says, just around how to build a kind of strong Power Platform governance strategy for your organisation. So in terms of what we're going to go through today, we'll go through a kind of an introduction to Power Platform, just, detail how it's set up, what all the components are, talk about why governance is needed across the kind of Power Platform estate, look at the governance framework and some of the parts of that and some of the useful bits that are there. Look at how you can kind of assess and look at an existing Power Platform solution and decide, how to take that forward and what parts of governance need to be applied to that as well. And we'll also touch on the kind of training, adoption and culture as well. So I'll be joined today by my colleague Taylor, who's going to take you through most of the detail today. So I'll start off just by doing the kind of introduction to Bridgell. I know a few of you probably know of us or have heard of us, but we're based in Glasgow. We've been going since 2002. We've got about 44 staff at the moment, although that's a couple of positions open just now, so those numbers will grow. We work across three kind of different business areas. So we work across business applications, which is the area that I head up. That really looks at areas such as like Power Platform, kind of Microsoft 365 stack, SharePoint, Dynamics 365, and custom development as well. And also kind of Power BI and business intelligence. We then manage the IT service, which is based more around kind of security, cyber security, infrastructure, and moving workloads into the cloud, such as Azure, and looking at things like cost reduction in Azure and those types of things as well. And then we've got a separate product part of the business, our Trevi product, which is a suite of kind of solutions focused on the water utility sector. We're also a Microsoft Solutions partner, and we're also a Microsoft Content Services Group preferred partner, so one of 26 worldwide. That really gives us access to the Microsoft engineering team early in the areas of kind of SharePoint and Power Platform and AI to be able to kind of shape up what's coming along and to get early visibility of what Microsoft are planning in that space as well. We're also ISO 9001 and 27001 certified, and we're Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus as well. We've got a right kind of mix of customers, so here's a kind of selection of some of our customers. We work across both the private and the public sector, across a number of different industry verticals. So we're not really kind of specific in any vertical or specific for private or public sector. We find this is quite good because quite often we're speaking to customers, maybe in the public sector and they've got a particular problem. Then we're speaking to somebody else in the private sector in a different industry vertical. and they might have the same problem, but neither would have had the opportunity to kind of speak to each other. So quite often we're seeing the same problems come up right across different organisations that mean that we've got approaches to kind of to fix them or to help with the solution or to come up with ideas if you need some ideas about how to fix problems as well. So I'll hand over to Taylor now, who's going to take you through the kind of introduction to Power Platform and right through to the end. I'll be on the chat, so if there's any questions or whatever that you want to ask as you're going along, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll do my best to kind of answer them as we go along. We've also got a Q&A section at the end, so I might hold some of those questions back, and then Taylor and I can answer them when we get to the Q&A section at the end.
Morning, folks. So I'll just I'm sure many of you will be well aware of kind of what the Power Platform is, but just in case you're not as familiar with some of the aspects of it, I'll just do a quick run through because it will help us later on. The Power Platform as a whole is really Microsoft's suite of productivity tools. Now, they are designed and built to help you iterate on solutions that you have. So whether that's in automations, using Power Automate, whether that's in kind of user interfaces with the Power App Suite, analytics with Power BI. The main idea of it is so that you can create potentially complex workflows with as little code as possible. So that empowers your team to be able to push that business forward without them needing that kind of technical knowledge that would be required for more traditional solutions. Now, the suite's made of several different components. You've got Power Apps, which is the main application development. Now, you can build quite a swathe of different things. I'll go into detail on that on there, but that's primarily the kind of user interface still. You've got Power Automate, which is your workflow automations. You've got Power BI, which is your business intelligence one. That seems to be one of the most well-known parts of the Power Platform. You've got Copilot Studio, previously known as Power Virtual Agents, which allows you to create your own agents, whether that's in the chatbot side or more recently leveraging AI and natural language models to assist your team. You've got Power Pages, which is the web suite, which allows you to push forward some web development without needing that kind of traditional web development team in-house. Power FX, which is a low-code development language for a little bit advanced uses than you might have for just the standard low-code stuff. That's the kind of middle ground between your traditional coding and the low-code approach of some of the rest of the Power Platform. You've got your AI Builder, which allows you to create and use your own custom AI models. And lastly, we have Dataverse, which is the kind of databasing structure that all of these different components can integrate with. Now, that's got a couple of different key features which are really handy, which I'll get into momentarily. Now, first of all, for Power Apps, you've got a low-code solution here where you can make pretty much any app you can think of, which is the key. So if you've got a specific business problem, it might be relatively niche, it might be specific to your industry or to your particular business, you can have a team in-house that can build a completely custom app that might usually take months and months or years and cost a lot to get a custom dev team in, pretty much with a very small team, very quickly, and keep it easy to maintain, keep that knowledge transfer nice and easy, and make it nice and responsive across multiple platforms without having that traditional development capacity. There's two types. So you have a Canvas app, which allows you to totally customize the kind of interface, very simple design experience, and allows for that kind of extra level of customization. And then you've got your model-driven apps. which interface with Dataverse that I mentioned earlier on. Now that kind of pushes the app towards well, it's in the name. It takes the data model first and drives the user experience based on that, off a series of views and forms. Generally speaking, the model-driven apps are more suited for larger scale data models. And they're very similar to the kind of, if you've ever used Dynamics 365, it's very similar to the kind of experience that you would expect from a Dynamics app. Power Automate is a key one. Now, we all have those manual tasks that we hate doing in the office. You might have to come in every morning and do the same thing over and over, like a checklist. Power Automate can take a lot of the pain out of that. Whether it's the use cases are endless, really. Whether it's simple kind of daily checks, whether it's joiners, movers, and leavers, kind of orchestration, whether it's even you can even have it interface with custom APIs as well. Whatever you can think of, Power Automate can pretty much help it. If it's a task that's done repetitively and the data is already stored somewhere, Power Automate can, chances are, work with it. And Power BI, a lot of you will probably be already familiar with Power BI. This is your analysis tool. You can get data in real time, have it automatically refresh, and build totally custom reports to let your decision makers make decisions in a timely manner with the accurate data in front of them without needing to spend so much time going through preparing reports manually. It's a really powerful tool if you've got a more complex business that you need to kind of get those insights on. And once again, Power Pages is the web development side. So you can build an entire web suite with clicks, not code, is the slogan there. So you've got a bunch of templates accessible to you. If you've got a bit more of that advanced expertise, you can extend it using those traditional web development tools. It's got comprehensive security and governance built in, so you don't need to handle that on your own. You're supported with that. And it integrates with all of the rest of the Power Platform suite, which can be really handy for especially those more online businesses. And Dataverse is the glue that brings it all together. So it's got secure storage and authentication on the back end. You can create your own custom tables. You can pull in tables from other data sources like SQL. You can build the database using Copilot. It gives you that really user-friendly experience when you're building up a kind of data repository and allows you to use it in a secure fashion. There's also the security on it is really built out. You can go right down to you've got row level security, you've got right down to column level security. The auditability on it is really quite extensive as well. So it's pretty Loctite depending on how you configure it. Now, another one which is kind of on the edge of it, but is very useful for what we'll be discussing today is Microsoft Syntax. Now, one of the main problems that you might experience if you're trying to classify a large amount of data is you don't want to have someone sitting going through hundreds of thousands of files because that will very quickly get boring. Now, Syntax is a tool, a very powerful tool by Microsoft that will you leverage AI and various other methods to go through your data, find it, organize it, classify it, process the documents as well, and really get that unstructured data into more of a structured setup. So whether that is automatic metadata tagging, whether that's OCR, so if you've got a bunch of invoices to process and you want to get that information out into another app you've got, and there's a bunch of built-in compliance and governance tools as well. So if you wanted to pick up particular keywords across your documents, it can do so, and then you can take actions on those keywords later. And Copilot Studio as well, you can create your own chatbots. So you might have various different business functions. To help with the training, you might want to have, you've got a knowledge base, you might want to build your own custom knowledge base that can execute actions particular to your business. You can build a Copilot agent to help with that. And once again, everything you can do with traditional tools, you can do with a Copilot agent as well, and just extend it out. The key benefit with the Power Platform is you've got all of these disparate tools for various different business cases, but you can pull them all together. So if you build your business out using the Power Platform, all aspects of it can be rolled into one. You've got the security side that talks to each other. You've got the logic side, all your data storage, and it all integrates both with each other and external services. However, if you use the Power Platform, you do need to put in, like with anything, you do need to put in a bit of governance. So if you, generally speaking, the Power Platform is designed for those so-called citizen developers. So to avoid you having the need for a professional development team, you can have key champions in the business, which will go out and push the business forward with these automations, making it as easy as possible for them. However, to an extent, if you leave them unchecked, then it can lead to some issues. Now, firstly, you'll end up with a bit of sprawl. So you might have 5, 10 different business areas from finance to logistics to marketing, and they might all use it, which is great. That's what you want to encourage. But if they're not talking to each other, if there's no oversight, they can use it and be building automations and apps, and it can very quickly spiral out of control. Now that has implications both for your licensing bill, your capacity, your storage capacity in certain aspects, and also general business efficiency. If you've got several different duplicate processes doing the same thing, it's not the best, and you're going to run into issues with data integrity and things like that. You need to kind of oversee it so that you avoid any risk of kind of data breaches. Now, it's a very powerful tool for moving data around, processing it, getting the most out of the data that you have. However, there's certain considerations that need to be made to make sure that data stays only where it's supposed to be and not going anywhere that it's not. A lack of training and expertise can also be an issue. So, generally speaking, if you've not trained your team or your champions, your citizen developers in the correct fashion, it will very quickly lead to these other issues. It's the gateway to it. Now, standardization and control is a very important thing. Now, if you are given citizen developers permissions to make customizations to logins, user accounts, and so on, they might not always be following your standard operating procedure. They might, if it's not part of their day job as such, they might not have the knowledge to know what is the best way to get that job done. So however, if you provide them some formal guidelines and standardized processes, then it helps guide them away from some unsafe or risky practices. And data loss prevention as well. So if you've got all of this important business data, you don't want to lose it. Obviously, well, we'll all be aware of the kind of massive risk that pertains, whether it's fines, reputational damage, and so on. There's while powerful, Power Platform gives you the freedom to do what you want. If you give people the freedom to do what they want without oversight, that's when you sometimes run into issues. So with a little bit of prep work and a little bit of guidance, you can avoid that risk while still getting the most out of the platform. And that's what we'll be talking about. There's a couple of different things that we can do to address these. The 5 core pillars of your governance strategy generally are as follows. So your environment strategy, first of all, is very important. Your environments are containers in the Power Platform. You might You can have as many environments as you want, but generally speaking, you want to limit it down to a few. These environments are containers for applying data loss prevention rules, permissions, for storing apps, for storing each set of data as well. So I'll go into a bit more detail on that shortly, but there's usually a very particular, there's usually a best practice when it comes to that. You probably want to apply some sort of application lifecycle management, and the environments that you set up can play a key role in that. The security and compliance, naturally, is your biggest concern with any system. You have very robust security controls in the Power Platform. Role-based access control, conditional access and MFA you can set up particular to the Power Platform. If you've got data residency regulations that you need to abide by, you can set it up so that you can deal with that, even across different data regions. Retention policies as well, if you are storing details pertaining to, say, external customers and you need to abide by particular retention rules, Power Platform can handle that for you as well. Your standard governance stuff, so you, with the Power Platform and Dataverse specifically, you gain access to a standardized suite of data tables to help you out as well. So if you have accounts, you've got individual contacts relating to those accounts, you've got various different sites, and it guides you to using those with some very powerful extensions onto that. So if you can integrate those standard tables into your builds, it'll go a long way and it'll keep everything a lot more organized. Now, it also takes a very strong look at your application lifecycle management. Now, everything in the Power Platform can be wrapped into solutions. Now, you might have a collection of components. You've got environmental variables in there. You've got Power Automate flows. You've got Power Apps, and so on. They're all relating to one particular function, and those can be wrapped in a solution, and that solution is particular to that function. Those solutions can then be moved in between your environments. So you might have your traditional development, user acceptance testing, production environments, or you might have separate environments for business critical apps, for instance. The way that Power Platform allows you to develop these apps makes it so much easier to move things between those environments. You can set up approvals in between there. So if you've got a couple of citizen developers, before that gets published to the wider business with a particular update, you can have that run through your IT team, for instance. So they can check it over, make sure it's all safe, and approve it for production use. And most importantly, before it gets access to production data as well. And lastly, the auditability of it. Now, Power Platform has some very powerful auditability tools built in. So every little change in a Dataverse table, every move you can basically look at on it. But it also integrates very easily with your Microsoft Purview suite. So if you've got any e-discovery cases that you need to run, it will include information on there. If you are just doing a standard audit, or if you want to apply any information protection rules, so if you've got some protected classifiers that you want to pick up on, it can pick those up as well. So it's seamlessly integrated with the rest of the Microsoft 365 suite. One very important as the centre of excellence. Now, there's a lot of risks that can come with adopting the Power Platform across your organization. As with anything, there can be risks, and now this centre of excellence helps you keep an eye on that. If you're wanting to govern that suite, especially if you're spread across multiple sites, if it's a very large team, it can be difficult to do it traditionally. However, this gets all of the information in your hands in front of you in a nice, easy, digestible manner. You may already have a center of excellence team set up in your organization to talk about business changes and to ensure you're pushing the business forward in the correct direction. This will be a tool that will help that team out. If you don't already have a Centre of Excellence team, that's a really important piece for any business change, but in particular with the Power Platform, because especially if you have multiple teams that are using this, the teams might not talk to each other, they might not know that what is being developed by Jim over in finance can be applied by Joe over in marketing, or vice versa. And that leads to hundreds of different methods, a real risk of kind of knowledge loss. So if one of them leaves, then who knows how to maintain that. Whether if they're all talking to each other, you can stop them spending as much time on developing these solutions because they'll already have pre-built ones, and maximize the return on investment you get with the Power Platform. This Centre of Excellence can be used for a range of things. So if you're auditing individual applications, you're looking for risky connectors, you want to see how it's handling data, you can do that in there. You can manage ownership of the application. So if you've got someone leaving the organization, you can see what apps they own, and maybe in their notice period, you can ensure that's completely in their handover. You can provide best practice and training through it as well. So if you see how people are using the apps, that'll help you tailor any particular training. For us, it's not a case of you're giving anyone into trouble. You know exactly where they might need that additional bit of training, so you can target it really well instead of just providing them a blanket washover, which can be stifling for some staff as well. And managing the connections and data available to particular users, so you can view your permissions in a nice top-down manner and see what everyone's got access to make sure that they only have access to the things that they should. So going into a bit more detail about some of the things we mentioned, environments are very well, and you can very effectively manage those within the Centre of Excellence. Just as I mentioned previously, you can have dev, test, production environments, as you would expect with a standard development cycle. You can have individual sets of environments for because that's the data. And you can individually map things for those environments. This can be given options. So if you have a suite of finance team, you don't want the general business having access to those necessarily. So you can lock it down to just your finance team and so on. And it's very easy to move solutions between those environments. So you might even have the same solution deployed across multiple environments because it's useful for those, but your individual team should be able to see the data that the other teams are putting into it. So that can be really helpful in keeping things nice and secure and ring-fenced. In the COE, you can view who actually are the people that are making your apps. So what are they doing? Who is it? Rather than and see it, but the Centre of Excellence is a much more effective way of managing that. You generally will find there will be some people that you'll have users and you'll have makers. You'll have some people take to it, really adopt it, really be advocating for it in their business area and building out things on their own. And you'll have people that are just content to, or they might not kind of be too keen on it, or are just content to use it and not push it forward. Your makers are the ones that are important to not keep an eye on, but to help get the most out of it. Because at the end of the day, those are the guys that are pushing your business forward when it comes to the Power Platform. Seeing exactly what we're doing, this can really help with your audit function. Now, you don't want to have to sit there and go through every single app and automation and check it with a fine-tooth comb, going into the components and see exactly what we're doing, because one, it's not the most effective use of your time, and two, you might not understand necessarily that particular finance function if you're in IT. You can't be expected to know all the ins and outs of every single person's job. So you might well miss something that's not most effective. Whereas this view just gives you nice and easily a overview of what connectors are they using, what solutions have they been in, what are they actively doing at the moment, what environments are they using, and so on. So you can get a one-pager look at what a particular maker is doing. It also allows you to look for business critical apps and flows. So you might have a particular app that has been getting used by a massive number of users in the business. You might not necessarily be aware that that app's being used by that number of users. This can highlight those because with these apps being used on a wider scale, if it's only been one or two people that have been developing that and maintaining it, you bring along a real risk of when you lose that person, you might lose the ability to maintain that app if there's not an appropriate handover. Now, this tool can allow you to quickly see exactly what's there, how many users have been shared with, how often do these users use it, along with a suite of other tools. So if you've got a lot of feedback coming in as well about the app, you can record it in here. You can record the business justification of it in here. You can, if someone is trying to put a business case out to your Centre of Excellence team, it's a very good way to track all the use cases, the intended audience, to make sure things don't get out of hand and to make sure it's developed in the most effective manner. All from here. Now, an important setting as well that is really quite critical for your business security here is tenant isolation. Now, previously this was off by default. Microsoft have made the decision to keep it on by default. Now, tenant isolation essentially makes sure that no other flows or apps can interact with your environment, and your environment can't interact with any other tenants in much the same manner. You might have multiple tenants across your business. You might have a group structure. They might have individual tenants for each of them. However, tenant isolation also allows you to whitelist individual other tenants. So if you have, say you've got a manufacturing entity and then you've got a retail entity, you might want information to flow from the manufacturing entity to the retail entity. You can do that without exposing yourself to the risk of one of your citizen developers connecting to someone else's and causing major issues there. And probably most importantly is your data loss prevention setup. Now, users on their own can set up to 3 of their own personal developer environments with the community plan. Now, the developer environments by design are supposed to be more unrestricted to allow you to develop, experiment, test things. However, you need to make sure that those restrictions don't end up circumventing any other security measures that you have in place. So, you can apply DLP rules to individual environments, but as a first step, you should be applying those tenant-wide, so that any environments don't have to be picked up on in the DLP configured. It should be from day dot configured so that nothing goes awry if anything slips under the net. You can set those up very easily, and you can do it via the traditional means in the Purview Center, or you can do it in the Power Platform Admin Center as well. It's got its own particular set of rules on that as well. And key is, as well, you have a massive range of connectors available to you with the Power Platform, which is really useful. You can pull in from Office apps, you can pull in from Dataverse, you can pull in from various different platforms such as DocuSign. These are all really useful, but there's also other connectors in there that you might not want to use, or you might not see a business use case for, or even custom connectors. which can pretty much be anything that you can put in an API call. You could set up as a connector. You want to block those by default. If you've got citizen developers going at it, they might not have the same knowledge and expertise as your IT team, your security team, and knowing what is risky, what is dangerous, and what is best practice when it comes to setting up these connections. It's strongly recommended to block any new connectors by default. So if there is a business use case for it, you can have that use case recorded. You can see exactly who would be putting information out to that, and you can make sure the other end of that connection secured if it's putting data elsewhere that's outside your tenant. Which is the key as well. You need to know your ingress routes and your egress routes for any kind of data that's coming in and out of your business. Where is it going? Why is it going there? Where is it coming from? And so on. There's different things you can do with that traditionally. So if you've got documents floating around, you can classify those documents with sensitivity labels and apply handling rules on each of those. For instance, if you've got a document marked as internal, you can set it up so that if someone tries and sends it externally, it'll block it and notify someone. You can also set up these labels on sites, environments, and so on. All different types of any kind of data container, you can set up these labels on to make sure they follow the same rules. You can restrict information from leaving based on the classifier. So have it or take action such as encrypting the data if it's going from, say, your tenant off to a supplier. And then permissions can be set up on individual labels as well. So you might have a highly confidential label that you want to be for the eyes of your executive suite only, and you can do that. So if anyone else tries to open the file, whether it's emailed across or whatever, it will just block it. They need to be logged in and authenticated on your tenant to view that data, and they need to be logged in as a user that has access to that permission group. The key with that is you might have, if you're an engineering firm, you might have SCADA drawings, you might have design documents, specifications, intellectual property in some way, shape, or form. You need to make sure that doesn't go out because that is your business, right? And you need to make sure that is not getting exfiltrated in any way, whether it's from a hostile agent or some kind of insider risk. And these tools can help you really keep a handle on that. Now, I'm going to kind of touch on an example of some of the work that we've done here at Bridgel to help one of our clients secure their tenant. The different issues that you might generally face, you might have messy environments, so you don't know what you have. Risk of knowledge loss, apps floating around everywhere, that can pose an issue. You might not have that oversight, like I had mentioned previously, poor knowledge transfer, non-standardized process. If you lose that knowledge, you might risk the key critical processes from getting done. You might have to revert back to an older version of the way of doing things. You might have to, well, you might not be able to, it's a real risk to that kind of business process, and therefore that has cost and time and energy and money at the end of the day as well. Without DL applied, you've got your risk of data breaches, insider risk as well. So if you've got a bad actor within your business as well, if they a disgruntled staff member, it makes it so much easier for them to cause damage to your business. And the same thing goes with unsupervised connectors. The key also with that is if you've got a business critical process then, and it's a connector that ends up being deprecated or compromised, if you don't keep an eye on this, you might have no idea. And again, that can open you up to risk later on. Now, with Lion Seafood, that's one of our clients that we did a bit of work for. They had a suite of citizens developers and they ended up leaving the business. They had done some great work with the Power Platform. They built apps from everything from product development to invoice approvals, CapEx approvals, all across the spectrum. But they hadn't really had oversight and management of the suite that they maybe should have had from the beginning. Now that led to you had parallel apps, parallel workflows across different business areas. Are doing the same thing in different methods to achieve the same aim, but they don't know about it. You had people going in and developing new apps and workflows, but there already was that app or workflow elsewhere that had been working. They just didn't know about it. So you've got multiple people even the same function using different apps. It caused capacity issues because of the method that they were using. So storage was quickly filling up. There was no retention policies applied, and as a result, there was massive holes in it. So the connectors weren't managed. So theoretically, you could. Theoretically, the way they had their tenants set up, they could have had someone on the inside spitting out data wherever they wanted, really. So it was really important that they got that under control, and that's when they spoke to us. They also had messes with their environments. At the time when we started work, they had something to the tune of 23 different environments. Some of them were just personal sandboxes. Some of them were for different business areas. They also have a parent company based in France, and the French team were doing work that the UK team didn't have any knowledge of. The same solution had multiple versions spread across different environments as well that they didn't know about. They might have been using an older version, whether a newer version had been developed to fix some of the issues, but they didn't know about it. We went in, we cleared up the environments, we set up a proper ALM strategy, and deployment pipelines. So with those approvals, you could have your app team doing stuff in your development environment. Once that's ready, pushing it out for test. Once that's approved, pushing it out to production. Standard what you would expect with traditional development. That really helped with that kind of oversight. So they have a projects team in there. The projects team were there to try and kind of shape the direction of the business and push them forward. But they didn't know in some cases, what some of these teams were doing. With that approval process set up, then that project team was much more effectively able to use the organization's resources and getting them where they want to be. The solutions that they already had, we went through and audited them, made sure that, okay, what's the most up-to-date version? What is, where are they all? Right, let's move these over to the proper environments. A lot of their components they developed standalone. They hadn't grouped together components into solutions, so that was a piece of work as well. So gathering all of those little dependencies into those solution containers, because a lot of the time you would find that they weren't being triggered directly. Like say you've got a flow, it wasn't being triggered directly from the app. It was getting triggered from updating a list on SharePoint, say. So as a result, someone would go in and try and maintain that and have no idea where that, say, approval kickoff flow was because they didn't know the name of it. It wasn't a standardized naming scheme. It wasn't in the same solution. It was a total nightmare for them to maintain. So we went through, grouped all those together, and we installed the Center of Excellence solution for them so that they can keep an eye on those things more effectively in future. The connectors that they already had at use, we went through them all, locked them down, made sure that if there was any components that that we couldn't really see a business case for, we reached out to the team members. Sometimes it was deprecated, sometimes it was experimental, sometimes there was a better option for it. So we just kind of guided them and made sure that was as secure as possible, and then set it up so that the new connectors were subject to an approval process as well, because they are, as a business, they were very security conscious in general, but with the Power Platform that had kind of it wasn't up to the same standard that they wanted for the rest of their suite. So we wanted to help them with that. We also applied some of those DLP policies across the tenant to make sure that once it's in their tenant, it's not going anywhere. Naturally, with their business, they've got a lot of products, they've got a lot of deals, a lot of projects ongoing. They want to make sure that data doesn't go anywhere and that it's auditable. It's a food company. A lot of the audit requirements for these kind of businesses are massive and really, really quite extensive. So we also did a bit of work with a view to improving that audit capability and making it easier when their auditors came in. So that's a pretty quick overview of why you need governance, what it is, and how to do it. So now we've got some time for some questions. If there's any questions you have, please pop them in the chat and I'll try my best to answer them. Just to highlight what Rona said in the chat, she's mentioned that versions of SharePoint, it was easy to get into a bit of a nightmare when the security measures conflicted with each other. Microsoft have indeed improved how you would set up these layers. So if you try and throw it all in at once, they say don't even try. Yeah, like Graham's said in the chat there, they have a documented approach that uses a crawl, walk, run analogy. You got to put in some bits and build it up from there. You got to have the foundation in there before you can build the skyscraper, so to speak. If you try and do too much at once, you will run into adoption issues. You will run into maintenance issues. You will run into parts where if you've not tested the initial foundation of it with your environments and the way your users interact with the system, you might go and build your later layers with an assumption in place, and that assumption might prove to be wrong or not compatible with the way your users interact with the system. So it's really important to just take it in those stages, and Microsoft has some great documentation now that guides you through that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Taylor. Yeah, if there's no more questions coming into the chat, I'll hand back to Zopash just to wrap up.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, so just before we finish up, I just wanted to say thank you so much to Taylor and Graham for an insightful session. Thank you for joining the session today. We do hope you found it useful. As I mentioned before, I will be sending a follow-up shortly, so that'll have the recording and the slides in it as well. So if you want to kind of go over anything or share it with anyone else, you can do. In the meantime, what it's like, if you've got any questions that you weren't able to think of on the session today, you can give us a wee message. I'll pop the details in the chat on how you can get in contact with us. We do have some other events coming up as well. We have a cybersecurity session coming up next week on the 7th of October. It's all about kind of creating a simple framework for your cybersecurity. So if that's something that you might be interested in, again, I'll pop the link and everything into the chat so you can sign up for that if you'd like to. But yeah, so thanks once again for joining us, and we hope to see you at another session soon. Thanks very much.